they ruined one of the best games of all time. My favorite game, my desert island game, the game that I would pick to play for the rest of my life, they took it and they absolutely fucking ruined it. Let me tell you all about it. Hey guys, I'm RNG Gamer. I play all my games randomly, and welcome to Beating the Backlog, the video where I tell you about the games that were picked for me to play randomly and my experiences with them. Now, every one of these games was either picked for me to play using a random number generator, hence RNG, random number generator, or they were picked by you, the viewers, for me to play, with the exception of the very first game. My favorite game ever, or at least used to be. It's The Binding of Isaac: Repentance. So you may be asking yourself, but RNG Gamer, I thought you freaking played everything randomly. I thought that was the whole point of your channel. What are you doing covering a game that you didn't freaking play randomly? Well, let me tell you, I've been playing this game since 2011. For those of you out there who haven't done the math on that, that's 13 years. I've been playing this game for 13 years, long before I even considered doing YouTube. I was in my 20s when I started this game. I'm in my 40s now. That's a lifetime. And I am so pissed that they ruined this game. And let me tell you how they did it. Now, I've spent a few thousand hours playing The Binding of Isaac, and I've watched thousands and thousands and thousands of hours of streamers playing this game. Every day, I watch a video of either Sinvicta or Northern Lion playing a run of The Binding of Isaac. And if you don't know what The Binding of Isaac is, it was one of the original games that sort of kicked off this whole roguelite renaissance that we're having right now. It's a mixture of a roguelite, and if you don't know what that is, it's where each run of the game is completely randomized, the layouts of the maps, the items, everything like that, and you're trying to piece together a successful run from your knowledge of the game, mixed with the dungeon crawling section from the first Legend of Zelda. And it sets it all in this allegorical retelling of the story of Isaac from the Bible. You progress through these levels, picking up items and trying to select the correct items to build a really powerful run to then be able to successfully beat the game, which takes an hour or so, and then that will unlock new items that you can find in future runs. Now, originally in this game, I got the Platinum Trophy. I found every item, I beat it with every character on every mode on the hardest difficulty. I got the 1,000,000% trophy in this. But then they announced the final expansion of this game, Repentance. They claimed that it was gonna basically double the content in the game. And let me tell you, they are not kidding. They added new characters, then they added alternate versions of every single character in the game, of which I think there are like 15, so there are over 30 characters in this game. They pretty much doubled the number of items and the number of levels in the game, including a bunch of extremely hard alternate bosses that you can only reach by going through secret paths that are found within secret paths of the game. And I will tell you this, I hate these alternate routes. I do not like doing them. They're not fun. They completely break whatever sort of flow you had in the game. They took all the old items and they nerfed them and rebalanced them. So old items that were like S tier items were brought way down to like C tier items. And items that were F tier and D tier were brought up to like C- tier. Basically, the game that used to be centered around building up these awesome synergies and these crazy builds where you just like blow up everything in the game in one shot turned into this sort of min-maxing exercise in frustration. It doesn't tell you what the items you pick up do. There are hundreds of items in this game, and it requires you to have a encyclopedic knowledge of what every single thing is. Most of the streamers you see play this game online, and they have a mod that tells what the items do, and that's how they're able to be so successful. When you play this game on the PS5, you have to sit there with the Binding of Isaac wiki open, and before you pick up every item, and you don't know the name of it, you have to recognize it from the way it looks on the screen, search that item up on this website, and then find out what synergies it has with all the other items you've picked up to see if it's going to work or not. And I hate that. That content should be in the game. That's really annoying when you accidentally pick up an item and it just screws your whole run over. Like you just fail. You put 45 minutes into crafting this perfect run and putting in all this work, and you pick up one item, you're like, oh, that's a new item, and it just ruins the game. All of a sudden your shots don't do what they're supposed to do, or they just blow you up, or they completely break the game. And there are items in this game that are not patched and will crash the game. I was doing a live stream of this and I picked up an item I haven't seen before, and as soon as I used it, it crashed the game. Super annoying, super annoying. So The Binding of Isaac was one of the first roguelikes I ever played. Maybe the first one, I can't quite remember. Like I said, it was over a decade ago. But since then, other roguelites and roguelikes have come out that have really refined the genre. A perfect example of this is Hades. Hades was my game of the year it came out. It's a lot of people's game of the year. It uses similar mechanics. You're building a run by collecting items. At least in Hades, you always unlock something. One of your weapons gets a little upgraded, or you unlock a new item you can find in a new run, or you unlock something to just add into your room that you're building between the different runs, or there's some new dialogue. There's always something, so you don't feel like a run is wasted. That is not the case in The Binding of Isaac, and definitely not in Repentance. About 50% of my runs end in failure, and some of them take an hour or more, and you get nothing for it. Absolutely nothing. Unless you find an item you haven't found before, you don't get anything. Now, I've been grinding on this game like crazy recently. I have put probably 200 hours into this game since the beginning of the year, and I was well on my way to getting the Platinum Trophy. But let me tell you what pissed me off so badly that I'm stopping this game. I'm ending it. I'm done with it. There are over 600 secrets in this game. There were just a handful I was missing. I didn't know what they were. You can't see what they are till you unlock them, which is really freaking annoying. I looked up what they were, and here's the big issue. Within the game are these little NPC characters that you can pay money to. And if you give them enough money inside the game, they have a small percentage of dropping an item that can help you in the run. One of the secrets of this game is for having a charge beggar drop 10 items over all your runs. I have close to 1,500 hours of this game on the PS4, about 800 hours of it on the PC, and about 400 hours of it on the PS5. You know how many times one of those charge beggars has dropped an item for me? Zero. 0 times. Not one time have I ever had one drop a freaking item for me. That makes me so mad that to think that I put in all this time trying to get the Platinum Trophy on this game, and then I'm just gonna have to grind for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of hours just looking for these NPCs to pay money to freaking possibly drop an item, so I can do that 10 times to unlock one of the 600 secrets in the game. And oh, by the way, unlocking all 600 of those secrets is just like 5% of the completion of the game. It's just a small component. It's not even its own trophy. I'm just done. I'm just done. The Binding of Isaac Repentance wastes your time more than any other game I have ever seen. And I just don't have the patience for that anymore. I just don't have it. The original Binding of Isaac, I knew what all the items did. Everyone did. All the streamers did. But they ruined it. They took a game that is single player, that has no online leaderboards, no competitiveness whatsoever, and they made it unfriendly to the player. They took it and they nerfed everything down and turned it from a cool game that was all about getting overpowered and seeing what crazy synergies you could come up with, to a small math problem that's very nitpicky, that has a good chance of failing. All the enemies shoot faster, there's less healing and health power-ups in the game, the strongest weapons all got nerfed, all the weakest weapons got rearranged to be more confusing, there are broken items in the game, and it's just an exercise in frustration. I still consider the version of The Binding of Isaac that came before Repentance, which is called Afterbirth Plus, to be one of the greatest games of all time. But this new expansion, I do not like it. I don't like the new characters, I don't like the new levels, I don't like the new items. But I don't like what they did to the old stuff. Add new stuff, that's fine. But don't change the old mechanics of the game. Why would you take a game that's loved by so many people and is still an extremely popular game that streamers play to this day after a decade and f it all up? Why would you do that? I just don't get it. So The Binding of Isaac Repentance took a 10 out of 10 game, an 11 out of 10 game, my favorite game of all time, and it knocked it down to a 7 out of 10. Why a 7? Why not like a 1 or a 2? Well, the mechanics are still there. They're still the foundation of a fantastic game. It's like when your favorite pizza place gets bought out by a big corporation. There's still a shadow of goodness there. That's what this game is now, a shadow of goodness. But it's just good. It's no longer a masterpiece. While we're talking about frustrating games, why don't we move on to a game that you guys, the viewers, forced me to play? You guys bought a gold star and selected this game for me to play on the live stream, and we live streamed the whole thing. It took me forever. And it's one of the hardest games I've played in a long time, and I was not prepared for that at all. And it's Resident Evil Code Veronica X on the PlayStation 2. So this game originally came out on the Dreamcast, and I played it for a little bit, but I'd never played the PlayStation 2 version, which has some extra content on it, and a few other changes that I'll get to in a minute. This is probably the most desired game from the Resident Evil community that they want to have remade. And I think it's going to get remade probably here before too long. And I agree with them. I think this game definitely needs to get remade. So you play as Claire Redfield, one of the heroes of Resident Evil 2, and she gets shipped off to a prison in South America. And this whole game takes place over 2 continents and goes through several kind of disjointed areas before she finally emails her brother to come rescue her. It's a very bonkers and weird story that hints like on incest and body dysmorphia and narcissism and a bunch of other strange stuff that feels a little out of place for a Resident Evil game, but it does give it like an interesting flavor that sets it apart from the others, even though it uses similar gameplay mechanics. Now, I say uses similar gameplay mechanics, and it does. There were 3 Resident Evils that came before this in the mainline series, Resident Evil 1, 2, and 3, and each one of them sort of took the mechanics of a survival horror game where you have limited ammo and exploring around areas, conserving ammo, and just surviving while you try to solve these puzzles and find keys to progress to new areas. Really, survival horror games are almost like a Metroidvania. But Resident Evil Code Veronica really took that concept and pushed it as far as it would go. The puzzles in this game and the exploring and just the combat is really, really freaking hard. It is hard as hell. This game is so hard. Let me give you an example of how hard this game is and how much they changed it for the Code Veronica X version on the PlayStation 2 over the Dreamcast version. When I was live streaming this, a person jumped into my chat to watch the live stream, and this person coaches people on how to speedrun Code Veronica, but primarily the Dreamcast version. And she was giving me tips on how to get through this game. And she was constantly blown away by how much they changed the X version, the PlayStation 2 version. Enemies don't spawn off screen anymore. So in the original version, you could stand off screen, and if you knew where an enemy was coming up ahead, you could aim to where they were and shoot them off screen. You can't do that in this version. Enemies don't load in until you enter the screen. So you run into the screen and an enemy will, within 1 frame, smack the crap out of you. So it makes getting through the game very difficult. They also increased the health of all the enemies. They nerfed most of the weapons. The primary weapon you use in this game is the crossbow, and it takes about 6 shots to kill a zombie in the Dreamcast version. It takes 40 something to kill them in the PlayStation 2 version. The handgun, which takes like 5 shots to kill an enemy on the Dreamcast version, takes 9 in this version. It's way over the top. It is way harder. It is like the hard mode on the Dreamcast version, but it's the only mode available on the PlayStation 2 version. They just make you play it on hard right from the onset. Now, the presentation of this game is really good. Claire is dressed insanely. She's in a bomber jacket and a crop top, which is, you know, perfect clothing for fighting zombies in freaking Antarctica. The music design is fine. The sound design's good too. It's decent enough. However, after playing Silent Hill 2 not that long ago, this pales in comparison to that. Like, that game's sound design was creepy and atmospheric, and it had like Dolby surround sound. It felt like at times you could hear where the enemies were coming from based on where they were coming out of the speakers. Code Veronica doesn't do that. The Capcom didn't nail that. They didn't get that going, really. But I do know that this was a Dreamcast game. But that's no excuse. There are great games on the Dreamcast, and they had time to sort of gussy up this game for the PlayStation 2 version. They just kind of didn't. They just sort of dumped it out there. Now, I like how this game aspires to something new, but it's really flawed. It is without a doubt the hardest Resident Evil game I've ever played, and I struggled like crazy on this. It's supposed to take, I don't know, 12 hours to beat this game. It took me 30 hours. 30 hours! Now, I was playing on live stream, and I was talking to people, and my focus was directed towards the chat and things like that. that. But even with them helping me out, I got stuck over and over and over again. But the number one thing that basically knocks this game down several notches in the mainline Resident Evil series is the fact that it asks you to predict the future. And it can soft lock you in a lot of places. And all along the way of me playing this, people were constantly telling me to look out for these sections where you can get freaking soft lock. At one point in the game, after Claire radios Chris to come save her, he shows up and it switches over to playing as him. He has like no items. He has no weapons. He has like a pistol with a couple bullets, but nothing else. You're supposed to, when you play as Claire, put all your items in the storage box so that when Chris shows up, he has access to all the items you collected in the game. The problem is it doesn't tell you that's going to happen. That just happens randomly. Not randomly, but at like an unforeseen point. There's no way you would know that unless that already happened and you got stuck in a situation where you had to restart. And there were no less than 3 people in my chat that told me that they had to restart the freaking game because they didn't know Chris was going to show up. And there are other parts in the game where it switches back and forth between Chris and Claire. They get separated, you switch over and play as Chris, then it switches back to Claire. They share their items between the two of them. You don't know when this is going to happen. So there's like a timer going off and you're playing as Chris and you got to go save Claire, man. The timer's going. Well, you need to detour to go back to a save room and drop your items off, or at least several items. You don't know which ones unless you've already failed, but you need to predict what items Claire's going to need without knowing that you're going to switch over to Claire and drop them in the freaking storage box so when the game switches over to Claire later, she has access to those items. There's one point where everybody's like, take all of Chris's items, put them in the lockbox, go do this thing because it's going to switch to Claire. Everybody's like, you need to leave the Magnum on Chris. Leave the Magnum on Chris because you're going to need it. And other people are like, he doesn't need the Magnum. Claire needs the Magnum. You need to take the Magnum over to Claire or you're going to get stuck. So I leave the Magnum in the freaking lockbox. I switch over to Claire. I finish her section. Then it takes me back to Chris and he's at a freaking boss fight with no healing items and not sufficient ammo to take out the boss. The save point was before Claire's section. So I had to reload like 2 saves back, play Chris's whole freaking section again. And this time, remember that when I put all his items in the freaking storage box, hold on to the stupid freaking Magnum so that after I play Claire's section, he already has the Magnum on his person so I can actually take out the flipping boss. What the crap? This game basically has a series of puzzles all the way through it and it just wants you to have them memorized. So instead of solving the puzzles of the game, it's like you need to know the solutions already so you can optimize the best way to do them. So if they do decide to remake this freaking game, they need to solve a lot of that. They need to give you some clues and some heads up and give you some more items so you actually have a chance to make it through this freaking game without help. Because if I did not have chat helping me, I would have had to play through this game like 4 times. I would have not been prepared for these big switchovers, and I think that is not fair. And I think that's the reason that this game hasn't received a remake, because Capcom knows people got really frustrated with it and they gave up on it, and they're not as likely to come back and play it again like they are the first 3 Resident Evil, or the first 4 Resident Evil games, 1, 2, 3, 4, which have all received remakes because they're beloved. This game is not as beloved as those for obvious reasons. Now, I'm not saying that Resident Evil Code Veronica X is a bad game. It's a good game. It's just massively flawed. It has the backbone of a fantastic game. It just needs to be molded into the masterpiece it could be. So, how did Resident Evil Code Veronica do? It's just a 7. If it wasn't for all that finicky soft locking crap, it would be more like a 9. I think there's a lot of really good stuff there. Up next, we have a game. It's one of my most anticipated games of all time. I was really looking forward to it. Sadly, it was picked before I was recording the videos of me picking the games randomly, but that shouldn't be happening anymore in the future. I'm recording them all now. It's Blasphemous, and this is the deluxe edition. This has been recommended to me by so many different people, and I will just come out and say this right now. The setting and the world building and the lore in this game is some of the best I have ever seen. We're talking about like Bloodborne, FromSoft levels of depth and creativity, which is saying a lot. And it's also saying a lot that this is a Souls-like. This is a Dark Souls style 2D Metroidvania. It has these strong religious and like self flagellation themes, dealing with piety and suffering. And in the lore of this game, a boy wished for a miracle to cause him pain and suffering because of his guilt. And it manifested by turning the world into this land of eternal suffering, which all of the inhabitants are like really into. They really like this weird world of pain. And it's very masochistic and bizarre and grotesque, but they love it and I love it. I think it's a phenomenal setting for a game, and I've never seen anything like that really hit on before in a game. Now, like I said, it is a side-scrolling Metrovania. It has this sort of Estus flask and bonfire system from Dark Souls, and the healing and the saving works the same. And there are tons of different areas to explore and collectibles to find and upgrades for your sword, and the enemies and the platforming are very difficult in this game. Like, people say it's one of the hardest games I've ever played, and it isn't for the faint of heart at all in terms of challenge or subject matter. There's no leveling up system in this game. Yeah, you power up and you unlock new things, but you don't get like, you can't grind for levels in this, if that makes sense. You're not going to be able to like get to a boss and get stuck on the boss and then go back and grind 40 levels and come back and annihilate the boss. There's none of that. You got to rely on your skills on this. Now, the game does get easier as it goes along, I feel, because you do upgrade your health, you do upgrade your sword, but those are done by just exploring each new area. You have different combos you can perform, and the game feels very fluid in its gameplay. There's nothing wrong with the play control in this. You got a dash or a dodge attack, you can block, you can parry, all the sort of things that you had in all the Dark Souls games and what you would expect. Now, we've hit on the aesthetic of this game and the world building, and the graphics look unbelievable. I love the pixel art presentation. I love the color design in this. The sound design is great, but let me hit on the voice acting. The voice acting in this game in English is fantastic. It's really good. The voice actors really carry a lot of weight, and I believe them in these roles, which is amazing for like little 2D sprites. But in Spanish, and this game was made in Spain, the voice acting is like a whole other level. Like, I don't have gameplay footage of it here to show you. I wish I could. I'm not going to play it anyway because I don't want to get copyright struck. But believe me, if you play this game, play it with the subtitles on and the dialogue in Spanish. It is unreal. It really changes the whole feel of this game. Now, in this deluxe edition, they included a bunch of the DLC, or all the DLC, I believe, and there's some really interesting additions, like new areas, and they even brought in some other characters from other indie games, like Miriam from the Bloodstained series. She has this whole thing with these time trials that you have to go through to unlock some additional, I don't know, item or something like that. They're really hard. They're one of the hardest parts of the game. Now, there are different builds in this game, and you can experiment with them, but it basically centers around like the different magic spells you can use. I didn't really use much magic in this game, and I kind of forgot that you had magic attacks for most of it. I just, like I said, hack and slashed and parried my way through this game, and I had a lot of good fun with it. Now, I did a video on my second channel, and if you haven't checked that out, that's RNG Gaming, where I finished the last boss of this game that everybody told me was going to be impossible. I thought it would make a really good video, and I beat it on like my 4th turn and got the bad ending. So then I went back and I beat like the hard DLC boss. I got her on like my 4th turn. Then I did all the secret like chalice dungeons to unlock the crap you have to do to get the true ending. Did all that on my first try without dying. Went back and beat the true last boss. Got the good ending on my first try. So I don't know if I'm really good at this game, or if it's just not as hard as I was expecting, or as hard as everybody's made out, because people were telling me it took them like weeks to beat the last boss. It's not that bad. It's not as hard as a Dark Souls game, guys. So don't let the difficulty of this put you off. It is challenging, but you'll get into it pretty easily, and it's very fair. I mentioned on this hidden ending, and it's a little esoteric. There were no real clues to me in this game on how to get the true ending of this, and the only reason I found out about it was that after I got the bad ending, I saw that there was a trophy for another ending, so I looked up what it was, and it was like, yeah, you're supposed to destroy these statues in the game that I didn't know you could destroy or do anything with after finding a secret item that I didn't know existed, and all this sort of crap. It was a little too esoteric for my liking. They should have given a little bit more direction for those, for that. And I wish that there was a map or something to show where the hidden areas are in the game. So Blasphemous, I thought, was a fantastic experience. It's one of the best games I've played in a long time, and I was shocked to find out that IGN gave this game a 7. A 7! That's Blasphemy. They're known for like overvaluing games and ranking them too high. They get money paid to them for good reviews, though. They didn't for Blasphemous. I think Blasphemous is not a 7. I think Blasphemous is a 9. Its world building is like a 10 out of 10, and the atmosphere and the art direction are 10 out of 10. The gameplay is like an 8. It's very good. It holds in there, but it's nothing spectacular. Fantastic experience. I loved it. I thought it was a fantastic game. Up next, we do have a recording of the game getting randomly picked for me to play, so let's spin that right now. 2, 1, spin. What's it gonna be? It could be anything. What's in there? Windjammers 2. So this is the sequel to the first Windjammers game. If you don't know what that is, it's a classic on the Neo Geo arcade system and one of my favorites of all time. I used to play it at parties at my house. I have it on a multi-card on my Neo Geo, and I would wreck absolute face at this game. Now, I was surprised that .emu decided to make a sequel to this game. If you don't know who they are, they're the developers that did Shredder's Revenge, which is the modern update of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles arcade game, and Streets of Rage 4, the sequel to the classic beat-em-up series from the Genesis. It's really cool they're taking all these classic franchises and bringing out sequels to them. So let me tell you about the story of Windjammers. So a bunch of people from the 90s are transported to the beaches of World War II, and before the Allied invasion at Normandy, the French and Germans have to battle it out in a Frisbee trademark competition while Ava Braun referees from the sidelines in a thong. Obviously, I just made all that crap up. This game is a mixture of Street Fighter and Pong. And as far as I can tell, with the exception of a few mechanics, this game plays exactly like the freaking first game. It works the same way. There's no difference. There are combos, cancels, special attacks. You throw frisbees past your opponent into these score areas of the net, and the first person to 15 points wins the round. Best of 3 rounds wins the match. Now, this is pretty much more or less a one-button game. The same button that you use to throw is the same button you use to dash. And you basically dash to the location of the frisbee really quickly, then input the command you want to do to throw it, right? Throw it at an angle, throw it straight ahead, do some super attack, whatever. But because it's an arcade game, you're dashing around, you're trying to like throw the frisbee as soon as you can once you catch it. Sometimes you end up getting there a little early. Instead of throwing, you dash out of the way and the frisbee falls to the ground. That sort of thing, that happens all the time. But you do get the hang of this before too long. But let me tell you something about this game. Windjammers is best played when you're playing it with friends and neither one of you really know all the mechanics of the game. When you're just button mashing and having a good time, that's when Windjammers is at its best. The enemy and the AI of Windjammers 1 and 2 are ruthless. Let me tell you about the first game. So in Windjammers 1, I beat it on easy, I beat it on normal, I jumped in on hard and could not beat the first match. And that game had been out a couple of years at that point on the PS4 re-release, which is where I was playing it in this case. I checked, and at the time, 2 years after release, not one person in the entire world had unlocked the trophy for beating Windjammers 1 on the hard difficulty. Not one person. It had a 0.0% trophy unlock rate. That's insane. That is extremely unbalanced. Now, that's an arcade game designed to steal your money. I get it, but I don't understand why .emu, the developers of this, brought back that draconian and unnecessarily hard difficulty on a game that's a home console version of the game. I don't get that, man. Let me play it on a harder difficulty because on easy and normal, it's not that hard. I beat it on easy on my first try, and on normal after just a few. I want to play it on that harder difficulty, but it's just so much harder. It's like 10 times harder than normal. Now, I know there's online play in this, but you're playing against other people. Make the single player experience a little bit more forgiving. And on top of that, the original game was an arcade game. If you lose, you just punch another quarter into the machine and keep going. This has limited credits. You get 1 credit to try to beat the entire freaking game. You can earn an extra credit, to carry over, but like you have to play through the game like 1.5 5 times to earn enough points to earn an extra credit, which means the game wants you to like be able to beat it already to earn more credits to work on it later in the future. I don't get that. What system is that? That doesn't make any sense. Make it so that for every hour of gameplay, you unlock an additional credit and you max out at like 10 credits after playing the game for 10 hours. So that gives you something to strive towards and a way for beginners to the series to have an opportunity to practice the freaking game without already being an expert at it. So you have a fairly large cast of characters you can play as in this game, and they're balanced between speed and strength. And let me tell you, there's no reason to pick anyone in this game that isn't like the top speed character or the top strength character. There's no reason to go in the middle. Because once you encounter the top speed character or you encounter the top freaking strength character, they're just gonna annihilate you. You need to have some stat that is better than whoever you're playing against, or at least as good. So just pick the woman who's the fastest or the dude that's the strongest, and it'll make the game a lot easier. They didn't really balance the speed of this. They didn't really balance the difficulty of this, and I kind of don't like that. And just getting the frisbee by your opponent is extremely hard in this. Like, they are ruthless. They will dash, they will block your special attacks, they'll counter them, they'll do everything they can, and it's just hard to score in this game. It's just really hard to score, and it can drag the games on to the point where most of the matches end due to timing out. And this game has blackjack rules, so if there's a tie, the CPU wins, which is not fair. I don't like that. I feel like a tie should go to the player. Wait, is that how blackjack works? No, in blackjack, if you tie, it goes to the player. Well, this is harder than blackjack then. When they released the original Windjammers on the PlayStation 4, they used the original Neo Geo graphics and it looked fantastic. The Neo Geo was a powerhouse of graphics and all those games looked incredible. Dotemu, when they put out the sequel, they gave it this sort of like, I don't know, bubbly sort of amateurish looking hand-drawn art, which is reminiscent of the way that Shredder's Revenge and Streets of Rage 4 looked, but not as much. They knew this was not going to be as big a hit as those games. It's a Neo Geo game after all, guys. It just kind of looks, like I said, cheap and amateurish. The cutscenes look pretty bad. The gameplay looks okay. It has like a cartoony look to it, and it's right in line with their other games, like I said, but I would have preferred the pixel graphics to be maintained. The music is good. It has some like early 90s influenced hip-hop tracks in it that I enjoyed, and the rest of it's kind of upbeat and fun, but it's pretty forgettable. But what is the conclusion to this? What is my conclusion to this game? Well, it just struggles with balance. That's the problem with this. The opponents are not evenly scaled. You'll struggle against one opponent like crazy, like it'll take you 15 tries to beat them, and then you'll 2-0 the next 3 without them scoring on you at all. And then you can't score a single point on the next guy, and it steals all your credits. And it feels like it's a lot more random than it should be. It should scale harder and harder to each match, but it doesn't feel that way. I'm sure there's a lot more fun playing with people online. I'm not gonna do that. My freaking PlayStation isn't even connected. I don't even have PlayStation Plus. So the first Windjammers is my favorite Neo Geo game, I think. I really enjoyed it on the PS4. I thought it was a lot of fun. And it's a lot of fun playing with friends. But Windjammers 2 is just not Dotemu's best showing. It feels like almost exactly like the first game, but it's more unbalanced, it's a little more finicky, and it doesn't look as good. Just play the original on the PlayStation 4 or bust out a couple $1,000s to buy it on the Neo Geo. So sadly, Windjammers 2, guys, just a 6 out of 10. Let's see what game got picked for me to play randomly next. Shuffle, 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 shuffle. 72 in this backlog. Let's spin. Here we go. Hope we get something good. What's it going to be? What's it going to be? It could be anything. It is the Amazing Spiderman on Game Boy. Wasn't expecting that. All right, let's play it. So after this got picked for me to play, I looked online and saw that many sites list this as the worst Spider-Man game of all time. It's published by LGN, so that's no surprise, but it was developed by Rare. Rare, the people that made GoldenEye and Battletoads and Banjo and Kazooie. All those games, those beloved games, those makers made this absolute piece of garbage. I decided to stream this because I knew it was going to be a disaster. A bunch of people watched it, and everyone was absolutely shocked by just how freaking terrible this game is. So what's the story? Well, it's the same story as most Spider-Man things. Mary Jane freaking gets kidnapped by some villains and you gotta freaking rescue her. That's all there is to it. So this is just a side-scrolling platformer, just like you would suspect, and it looks pretty freaking bad. As one of the viewers put it, Spider-Man has gamer posture. He is like hunched over, like at the mid-back. I don't know why he looks like that, but it looks so strange. He can punch, and he can crouch kick, and I don't get that. You would think that like you would kick while standing up, and when you knelt down you would punch, because it seems really hard to kick someone while you're crouching down, but that's how it rolls in this game. If you hold the punch button down, he can shoot webs, which kind of act like bullets, but your ammo is limited, so you have to use them sparingly. Spidey can also jump and high jump if you can get it to work, which is not always something that happens. And he can also web sling at times, also if you can get it to work. Now, there are no iframes in this game that I can tell, and sometimes a basic enemy, like a bat, will just drain 3/4 of your health, and when you die, you instantly spawn right where you fell off or died. So an enemy will spawn, take 3/4 of your health, kill you, you'll immediately respawn right back on top of them, and they'll take like another 3/4 of your next health bar. It is absolutely frustrating. It is so frustrating. We've talked about how bad this game looks, and it's a Game Boy game, guys. We know it's a Game Boy game, and we know how Game Boy games look. But this one looks especially bad. And the music is terrible. The freaking opening song is, honest to God, a 3-second long clip that just loops. Just just what? It's so lazy. That's so lazy. So we've hit on what makes this game bad, but let's just dive into that a little bit more. So Spidey has a really bad range with his punch and kick, and the enemies shoot the freaking second they appear on the screen. They just walk on, bam, they just blast you from point blank range. You can't do anything about it. All the time you're constantly taking damage in this game, and it's really more about like just tanking your way through the levels because it refills your health at the end of the level. So if you can get there with even 1 point of health, you succeeded. Everything is positioned in really bad and frustrating spots, and because the controls don't work, sometimes you can't even jump over something, like a stump. Like there'll just be like a simple stump or a box in front of you, and you just gotta jump over it, and it just won't work. It just won't work. On the next to the last stage, you have to web sling through most of the level, but half of the time, it just won't work, and you'll fall to your death. There are platforms in your way that you can't get to where you need to go, and web slinging uses up your web supply, and if you run out, you just can't finish the level. But it doesn't even matter because the boss can only be shot by shooting him with your webs. What the crap? I got so good at this game in this stream that I could make it to that level without ever dying, and then I would die like 7 times trying to platform or web sling from like one building to the next. I don't know how anybody beats that level. I still don't know. This game is just like a disaster on all fronts. There's really nothing good about it. All I can say about it is that it didn't crash on me, and that I had a good time streaming it because everybody was having a really fun time watching me suffer. Maybe that endeared the game to me a little bit more than if I'd been playing it alone, because if I was playing it alone without the chat supporting me emotionally, I don't think I would have made it past the first couple stages. So I couldn't beat it. All these other games I beat, but that's okay, man. This is a terrible game. This is an absolutely atrocious game, and I would advise you to just never, ever, 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 ever play it. That's all you have to do. It's one of the worst Game Boy games I've ever played. It's a 3 out of 10, which is awful. If you made it this far, guys, I really appreciate it. If you would, do that for me. Subscribe to the channel, hit the bell notification so you know when the new videos come out. They come out every Saturday. We're streaming on Tuesdays now, so come check those out. Check out my other YouTube channel, RNG Gaming. And I would like to take this as an opportunity to thank the channel members and Patreons. The best way to help the channel is by doing all those things I just mentioned, but if you want to do a little bit more, for only 99 cents a month, you can get access to member exclusive videos. And if you want to spend a little bit more, there's a whole bunch of stuff you can do. You can see the channel members and Patreon supporters on the screen right now. So thank you so much for your support, guys. I don't make any money doing these videos. I'm still in the hole from doing YouTube, buying the camera and all the supplies. I haven't made my money back for that. So every little bit really helps. And it assuages my wife. It makes her feel better about me doing this whole YouTube thing. I really appreciate you guys, and I'll catch you guys next time.